This conference will now be recorded.
All right, the Clatsop County Planning Commission for Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 will come to order. Would staff please take the roll?
Christopher Farrar.
Present.
John Orr. Commissioner John Orr. Okay, I can see him on the screen. Lum Kwong.
Here.
Okay. Myrna Patrick.
Present.
Nadia Gardner.
Present.
Robert Strickland.
All right, moving on to the agenda. I'll take a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. So before we get started, I just wanted to have a few suggested changes on how we're running meetings going forward. First of all, I'll just say that I have a lot of experience chairing meetings, but not as formally as this commission is being run. So I welcome your feedback either in or outside the meeting. And so I just wanted to encourage all the commissioners as well as our visitors to be on video if possible. So I know that Ms. Hendrickson has given the opportunity for people to come in and use the county facilities if desired and if people feel safe. And I certainly understand right now it's a vulnerable time. So I just wanted to encourage people to do that. But one thing that I've found to be a little difficult to understand is when people vote, if you vote by over video, verbally, it's sometimes hard to understand who's voting, especially if we have a mixed vote. So if people could try to just raise your right hand when you're voting either aye or no, I'd really appreciate it. And that'll let us identify who's voting for what a little bit more clearly in this video format. And finally, I think it would also be a little easier. It's a little challenging also, but if you'd like to speak, I'm happy to call on people. So if you could either raise your hand or say, Chair Gardner or Commissioner Gardner, I'm happy to call on people. I want to make sure that everyone is heard and people feel respected in the order. So I welcome people to speak up, and hopefully that'll help make sure that we don't talk over each other going forward. That's going to work sometimes and not always. So I also ask that people try to be patient and forgiving of each other. We're all volunteers, and this video format makes things a little bit more difficult. Hopefully we'll be out of this in the next 6 months, but this is what we've got right now. So I appreciate everybody's patience with me and with the group. Any questions or concerns about any of that? Okay, so let's move on to business from the public. This is the opportunity for anyone to give a brief presentation about any land use planning issue or county concern that's not on the agenda. All speakers from the floor are to state their name and their address before speaking. And if you're appearing as a representative of an organization, please identify who you represent. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak?
Yes, that is me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please identify yourself.
Okay, I'm Stuart Sandler, address 31941 East Shingle Mill Lane in Arch Cape. As some of you may know, 3 conditional use permits have been applied for concurrently in the Arch Cape wetland bordered on the south by East Shingle Mill Lane. These applications have 2 main things in common. They are all for roads into the wetland, and they are all proposed without their ultimate construction projects attached. Their purpose is to get you to accept these roads without any consideration of the wetland construction projects to come, leveraging their position that you will not be able to deny their wetland projects if you have permitted their roads in. Roads to nowhere, or rather, roads to someplace very wet. This is a state lands designated wetland, and these road projects are the foot in the door for the destruction of that wetland. If these projects go through, it's highly likely there will be nothing to stop the entire wetland from disappearing. For the locals, and there are many who love this wetland and its views and wildlife, it's an elk sleeping ground. Protecting it to the exclusion of a housing district is a no-brainer. The applicants have cleverly submitted proposals that, for the road ingress only, skirt the actual wetland so that the wetland as an issue might not be officially appraised for these applications. But make no mistake, this is a judgment on the continued existence of the whole wetland, not just these patches of road, and permission signals the death knell for the entire wetland. The applicants have separated these road applications from their overall projects, yet they want to have utilities installed without any notion of the overall project requirements and with none of the wetland delineations that will ultimately be required for construction. It makes no sense at all, except to someone looking for a foot in the door. It's the cart before the horse, and it's no way to deal with a perishable resource like a wetland. A decidedly important resource. There are numerous references available asserting the crucial value of these wetlands in absorbing large amounts of water from the hills to the east. None of these projects expresses any notion of how all this water, which already overflows drainage resources at peak times, will be accommodated. Flooding of downstream housing and consequent public safety issues could be serious expenses for the county to muster if these projects are permitted. You will receive more pointed commentary on these objections from Arch Cape Community Club and Oregon Coast Alliance, organizations representing significant public opposition. ORCA points out that road construction must not be separated from overall project development. The Community Club comments on the lack of wetland delineations and that utilities should not be constructed without utility plans. What if the overall projects are never approved? More roads to nowhere? There might be a win-win solution in view. Lot 3702 in the upper slope east of the wetland, already owned by the county, has been discussed with the potential for swapping with wetland owners for development, leaving the wetland intact. Perhaps worth considering. Barring such an outcome, however, I'm asking for denial of these potentially damaging road incursions, but if not that, at least convene public hearings where opposition to the offending roads can be seriously assessed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sandler. Any questions or discussion from the planning commissioners?
I just have one quick one. Are those comments going to be submitted in a written form as well as orally? Because you went over a lot of details.
I have submitted them, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing me.
Okay, next we'll move on to the minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Who is speaking?
This is Susanna Gladwin from the public.
Oh, hello, Susanna. Could you
Hi.
go ahead and state your first and last name and your address for the record?
Yes, Susanna Gladwin, 82316, Highway 103, Seaside, Oregon, 97138. And I don't know if this is the appropriate spot to comment on parks, but I just wanted to just mention something. I had mentioned it to Gail Henderson about a park on a state forestry map, a county park that's covered up by the legend on your agenda package, so you don't see it. And I don't ever remember really it being developed, but it's east of Highway 103 and 26 by Elderberry Inn and everything there. It's several miles further east on 26, and it's off of 26 to the southeast, and it's abutting Quartz Creek. And there's also, it's a state trail, and it's on the state website, is Bloom Lake Trail that goes to Bloom Lake. And someplace it showed from the Bloom Lake Trail, I think it shows as a road to Lost Lake and Soapstone Lake, maybe. I forgot where that whole thing goes to, but I was kind of intrigued. I'm much too old to do hiking anymore, but I found all that interesting. And just wanted to have that in the record when you're considering. I don't know if you're considering state parks in Clatsop County or just county parks. But the Quartz Creek Park is designated as a county park. And that's my comment. I don't know if anybody wants to ask me anything.
Thanks, Ms. Gladwin. Are you on the committee for the comprehensive plan update?
Yes, and I have mentioned that. Yes.
Okay, so that's another great venue for you to discuss that, because this is just the first time the Planning Commission is just looking at this recreational lands goal 8 section a little ahead of time, but that will also come to your committee. So since your committee is the most familiar with that area and likely that park, maybe you can bring forward some ideas through that venue process. Any other questions or discussion from the Planning Commissioner on Ms. Gladwin's comments? All right, anyone else from the public wish to make a comment? Sounds like I think Commissioner Orr is having a challenge from an audio perspective. Raise your hand if that's true, Commissioner Orr. I think he logged back in and logged back out, but is supposed to be unmuted, and I see that he's talking and I can't hear him. Okay, well, we'll just have to move on. Sorry about that, Commissioner Orr.
Well, can we confirm whether he can hear us? John, if Commissioner Orr, if you can hear us, could you raise your hand or acknowledge?
He's been in the chat as being challenged on audio. Oh, he's getting out. Maybe going to try to get back in one last time. I think he could also call in. Is that right? Just dial in using your phone. Could you, Ms. Hendrickson, could you just tell him that he could dial in just using his phone for the audio? Because that's
Yes,
probably
ma'am.
better than nothing. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Well, we should probably wait for him since he's our quorum. So text him too since he's now gone. Sorry, everybody. The joy of online meetings.
In the meantime, could I ask Stuart a question?
Sure.
This is yeah. Could you fill me in on the project where you were talking about, Stuart?
Well, the most immediate one from my perspective is the one on Anvil Rock Road in Arch Cape.
Okay.
And that is a project which, as I've described, really describes nothing. It asks for a lot, but describes very little. There's been no specific wetlands delineation from the applicants, although this is a state land designated wetland. And they are asking for utilities to be installed with no project plan at all. And I haven't reviewed or gotten information on the other two projects that are also incursions to other parts of the wetland. But what I've been able to gather from Orca and from the other groups involved here is that they are all basically doing the same thing. They all are skirting the wetlands in their road proposals, and they are not coupling them with their ultimate projects, which makes them sort of, I don't know, silly is probably not the word, but it seems that way.
Okay.
More threatening is probably a better word than silly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Could staff please just speak to the process of road development as opposed to or as connected to lot development in that zone?
Good morning. This is Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. The extension of a road or the development of a new road is considered a Type 2 conditional use in the Arch Cape Rural Community Residential Zoning District. It is a separate use that's listed independently of any type of single-family housing development. So it is an activity that's permitted conditionally, potentially, in its own right, on its own merits. And all three applications have been submitted according to that process.
And so those tend to be a staff decision.
A Type 2 conditional use permit is the director's decision, correct? And wetlands would be managed through the Department of State Lands. They would not be something that Clatsop County regulates.
And if it is like this, seemingly a little bit more controversial, is there reason to bring those kinds of projects up to the Planning Commission, or is that not done?
Again, it's at the discretion of the director, which would be myself.
Okay, I think
May I
it's
speak?
time. Sorry, go ahead.
May I speak? As I said in what I read, I am hoping that if no actual decision can be made at this point, that at least public hearings will be convened so that people can really express their views on this position.
Thank you, Mr. Sandler.
Thank you.
Your interests are registered here, and we won't make a decision at this meeting, but as Director Hendrickson said, she may make that decision. It just it's at her discretion. So, all right. Thank you so much. Let's move on. So for the minutes of let's see, the minutes of January 12th, 2021 regular Planning Commission meeting. Does anyone have corrections? If there are no corrections, we can go ahead and approve those as presented. And move on to the meat of the meeting here, the comprehensive plan update. Do we get, so yes, Ms. Henderson.
Okay. Will you be having a motion and a second for the meeting minutes?
Well, it's my understanding that with minutes, you could do it either way. If the commission would prefer to do it with a motion and a second, I can. Yes, Ms. Hendrickson.
I just wanted to verify how you were proceeding. Thank you.
Okay. I read my Robert's rules and that's my understanding on the minutes. But if people have a strong preference either way, I'm fine with either way. All right, so let's move on to our next order of business, which is the comprehensive plan update. And I just wanted to make a note on this as we move into it, that as discussed at our last meeting, the Planning Commission had prioritized our interest in terms of what to do when we don't have applications and comp plan work at meetings. And it was clarified to me by Ms. Hendrickson that we need policy direction from the County Commission to work on affordable housing, including short-term rentals, which was our top priority. And so in the meantime, staff suggested that we look at a section of the comp plan that is in our priority list, which is around parks. So we can look today at goal 8, the recreational needs element of the comp plan, because of that interest. And we can decide going forward if we want to. This is a little out of order because it's going to the community groups and then coming to us later. But since we didn't have other business today, we thought we could try this out. And so I'd love to hear what other commissioners feel about doing this in this order. But I found it to be a really interesting aspect of the update. So if staff could please present the staff report and materials.
Okay, so there is a cover memo that was included in your agenda package. It addresses what the purpose of this exercise is. It talks about the Clatsop County Goal 8, which was adopted and updated in 2006 when the Parks Department updated their Parks Master Plan. In 2010, the group also created a natural resources inventory and stewardship plan, which I believe was one of the action items that was included in their 2016 update. And that document is intended to help guide the management of the parks that are under the county's control and jurisdiction. What we've been doing with the citizen advisory committees and what we would ask the Planning Commission to do today is to review the existing goals and policies. You will see that staff has provided our recommendation. We are also asking for Planning Commission recommendations, and then those 2 items would be included in the agenda package that would go out to the different citizen advisory committees beginning sometime in March or April when they start their Goal 8 review. And that's really the process. We have 2 worksheets. The first worksheet contains the existing policies, and then you'll see that there's also a second worksheet that is for you to identify any new issues that you would foresee arising over the next 20 years that would affect recreational lands in the county, and then any proposed solutions that you might have that could be incorporated as draft policies into the comprehensive plan. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So I wanted to note that we did lose Commissioner Orr again. I had texted him that phone number. Maybe he will come back, but we no longer have a quorum, which is probably fine since we have nothing to vote on for the rest of the meeting. But I do regret his lack of participation, as well as Commissioner Strickland, who has a real interest in this topic as well. Commissioner Farrar, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, on the business of a quorum, aren't there 4 of us in attendance?
Oh, yeah, so we have myself, Farrar, Kwong, and Patrick, and then we're missing 2. So that's right. Thank you.
Okay, so going to the policy review, I have a general comment about it. It appears that staff recommend retaining virtually all the items in table 1, and I would more or less concur with that, but I did have a lot of individual small questions which I don't want to take up meeting time with today. I can write them up. Probably almost half of the items in table 1 I have some question or comment related to it, but the general one would be that it would be helpful to know for some of the specific policy ideas whether those have been completed, because some of them are written up in a way where it infers that there would be some action taken, and it's unclear in the past 10 years or so whether some of these can be checked off as done, or are they the sort of thing that needs to be updated and kind of redone this long after the what was done in the earlier part of the 2000s. So I don't know if Gail, you'd have a comment on that general sort of question.
Sorry, Ms. Hendrickson.
Sorry.
Yes. Before we did send the memo out, I did reach out to Steve Meshke, who is the director of the Parks Division, and asked him for comments and updates about the policies, and I've not received a response from him. So to answer Commissioner Farrar's question, there are probably items that do need to be deleted because they are completed, or items that need to be updated. However, after reaching out to the Parks Division manager, I was unable to ascertain that information in time for your agenda package.
Okay, just to follow up on that, then I don't know whether to take that to mean that there's no intention of the director of parks to reply to that request for what's, bringing these policy items up to date. I would think that it'd be very important to get input from the parks director and staff. And related to that, I recall a presentation about a year ago, I believe, by the director of Parks Department, and it's really sort of a part-time position, as I recall. It would help me to understand where the county is on the issue of recreational land, to be reminded again what the staffing is in that department, to have a better idea what might be expected as reasonable to come out of the department. Could Ms. Henriksen inform me on that, please?
Sorry, Ms. Hendrickson.
Thank you. I cannot address the staffing levels for the Parks Division. They are a different department than mine, and I do not monitor their staffing levels. I can certainly find that information out and bring that back to you for your next meeting, but at this point, I do not have that information available.
A quick search on that found that Steve Meshke is the natural resources manager for the county, which includes both the parks and natural areas, as well as the fisheries program, which is the net pen program, which is a pretty significant program within the county as well. Commissioner Kwong, did you have a comment or questions?
No, I don't.
Commissioner Patrick? Did you have any questions or comments? I'm not hearing you now. I wonder if you're on mute or stepped away. Okay, well, I had a few comments. Again, I appreciate Commissioner Farrar's comments on, what's been done. I really think there's a lot here, and I really appreciate all the work that was put in previously to both the comprehensive plan document, but also to the associated plans that the Recreational Lands Committee worked with consultants and the public to develop. There's really a lot of great ideas there. I question whether, what has actually been done because of the limited capacity of our county recreational lands staff and committee. So besides the director, I might suggest, and I don't know if you've thought about this, Ms. Hendrickson, that the actual Recreational Lands Committee look at this and give their suggestions, because they are the ones who have spent, some of them, decades working on this. And so it's important for them, I think, to have some input. Yes, Ms. Hendrickson.
Yes, we have planned to do that. However, this agenda item was moved up on our list of things to do in order to accommodate the need for the Planning Commission to discuss one of their priority items for this meeting.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Just want to make sure about that. So, and in terms of I will send some individual comments from my personal level, but I did want to note that in policy 2, it says that the county should retain existing county-owned streamfront properties that are in these different plans as needed for public access, such as boat ramps, trails, and other recreational needs. And I would suggest that that would be expanded to, say, streams, rivers, lakes, and oceanfront properties. With sea level rise, we are going to have significant loss of ocean access in our communities with the installation of riprap over time. And then also just the loss of beach. You won't be able to walk on many of our beaches. First one to go will be Falcon Cove, but others along the way as well, especially in high tide events. Cannon Beach will also be significantly limited, and Arch Cape. So I would love to see that expanded to ensure that recreational access is secured going forward. I'd also love to see the way that we talk about our parks to be not just so recreation focused, because the reality is actually most of our parks are natural areas. And so many municipalities choose to get away from this recreational lands speak and speak about parks and natural areas. And I think that's an important naming, because it acknowledges the fact that that parks are more than just about swing sets and boat launches, and trails, but about a combination of values to our local communities. Finally, I just wanted to note that 2.1.4 acknowledges the funding gap that the recreational lands programs have here in the county. And I know that that was an interest for many of us, but especially for Commissioner Strickland, who's not with us today, that you can see there, consider the formation of a restricted fund as a source of stable supplemental funding for parks. So that's something that we had talked about. Many municipalities in the United States do that, where they have a part of a development fee or something like that, an SDC, system development charge, or other mechanism. I think there's several ways that you could do it. And so if that is an interest, which it seems like it's an interest of the original comp plan, the recreational committee, and of the planning commission, my question to staff is, what's the best way to go about exploring that and suggesting it to the county commission? Ms. Hendrickson. Thank you.
I apologize, I forgot to raise my hand.
Oh,
I would suggest that this would be an item that we ask the county manager how he would like to address. He will be the one who will be the liaison with the board and developing their agendas. So it will be something that I can put forward to the county manager for his discussion with the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you.
Nadia, this is Myrna. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Commissioner Patrick. Thank you.
Okay, I had to go off and come back on. I don't know what happened, but anyway, I just wanted to make 2 comments. One, as I said, I thought that the staff has done an outstanding job on going over all this material, as they do on many other things. But I'm wondering if the suggestions that have been made so far should also be discussed with the park department on or before we go through the county commission and the county manager.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Patrick. I think Ms. Hendrickson was explaining that she did send this information to the Natural Resources Manager, Steve Meshke, but he has not gotten back to her. It will go to the Recreational Lands Committee, and then it's also going to go to the individual community groups, the Comprehensive Planning Update, and then it will come back to us. So we're getting this a little early.
I was just going to say the comments that have been made today by other commissioners, if those comments should also go to them.
Oh, yes, thank you. Ms. Hendrickson, is that the process? Will our comments also go to those groups? Yes.
Yes, so we will include the Planning Commission's comments on the spreadsheet that we have here when it goes to the Recreational Lands Advisory Board.
Thank you. Commissioner Patrick, did you have other comments?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Farrar.
Thank you. I have another couple of general points, and I know they don't really fit into the format of the way we're kind of set up to address specifics in the table 1. But I always find it helpful to get more background, and in reading through some of the material in the packet, specifically the several pages that give the text of Goal 8 at the statewide planning level. These recreational needs is Goal 8. And I find it interesting that this goal does seem more oriented toward developed uses of land rather than open space. It does mention both, of course, but after a short introductory paragraph, it dives right into a section on destination resort siting and talks a lot about destination resorts, and that those generally have quite a lot of facilities with them and not so much about just natural areas and being out in the open spaces. And I'm just wondering, is that the intent of Goal 8, to be more focused on developed sort of parks where you play sports or you have large picnic areas or other activities that aren't about looking at trees and birds and elk and things like that. So it's kind of, I'm just kind of rambling here about my thought process as I was thinking about this goal and how our county should address this goal in its comprehensive plan. And kind of related to that is we're updating the plan. So we want it to be good for we're updating the comprehensive plan for the county. And we want that to be good for at least 10 years and possibly have a viable life of 20 years that's meaningful. What are we doing to get a sense of what the county's going to look like 5 years from now and 10 years from now in terms of population and the types of people that will be residents here, what their interests are, what their needs are for recreation, and so on. I looked at, very briefly this morning, I opened up the Oregon State Parks Comprehensive Planning document for, I think, 2019 through 2023. And I see that there's quite a section in there. I didn't have time to go into it in detail at all, but quite a section in there looking at the changing population in the state and what that might mean for parks. The different types of people that are moving here from different cultures, and some of them with different languages and so on, all these factors. And it seems like the county's comprehensive plan should consider these kinds of things. And so I'm just rambling on here, sort of wishing for a broader discussion on it so that the comprehensive plan comes out right in representing the people of the county. So I'll leave it at that.
I hear two points there, Commissioner Farrar. One is about recreational needs versus open space wildlife and how, like, the nexus, right? So that is a question I had, Ms. Hendrickson, about how this, so this one really focuses on recreational needs, but we have a couple other goals that talk about wildlife and open space and more natural areas. Like, how do these two link together in terms of, you know, translating into the way that the county manages our lands, our wildlife or natural areas and parks lands? Yes, Ms. Hendrickson.
Okay, thank you. So goal 5, which is the goal that we're finishing up right now, does contain an inventory of different resources that are more nature oriented. So it addresses wilderness areas, open spaces, natural areas, scenic sites, among other 13, I believe there's 13 other inventories, or 13 inventories total that are resources that are inventoried as part of goal 5. So goal 8, based on my reading of it, is really, as Commissioner Farrar pointed out, geared more towards recreational areas that are improved for specific types of recreational use, as opposed to just a very passive use, which is more of a protection issue than an improvement issue. And so those would be how the two work together. They're not necessarily incompatible. I think that you could certainly have both in the same piece of property and develop that through trails perhaps and things like that, but they do work together. They're not mutually exclusive.
And then Commissioner, for our second point was about our changing demographics. And I was catching up on my New York Times Magazine from December, and I read a really horrifying article about climate migration and about how many people will be displaced south of us in a short period of time. So we have a potential real increase in population up here, as well as a shift in race and ethnicity across the country. But here too, we currently have 10 to 20% Latinx for the most part, with a sprinkling of other people of color and indigenous people. But that could change, and it would be good to see that is acknowledged and discussed within our comp plan in different sections. In terms of race, in terms of recreational lands, you might think about, as Commissioner Farrar said, you know, different types of recreation that might be the focus of those different groups. The stereotype might be picnicking and soccer versus boat launches, right? But that's definitely something it would, you know, it'd be good to acknowledge that throughout the document, really, about the shifting. And then we might have more families here versus, you know, balancing out our large retiree population as people are forced to move out of fire-prone areas, primarily in areas that no longer can grow food. So that's what we're gonna see happening in the next 20 years. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Kwong.
One point that you just brought up, that fire. I mean, this last summer, Newport, there was fire in Newport, and as I drive around, I looked, and we have a lot of clear cuts, and when those clear cuts started to grow back, and you have these all these alders, there's just basically twigs. Unless there's all these trees are basically twigs growing on in these clear cuts, and I'm really concerned about about fire, because one summer hit, we're pretty dry, completely dry. I mean, it may not, we may not think of it, but potentially fire could be a pretty scary around here. And you're looking at fire other places, and people come here to take refuge, but what if there was fire here? Where do we go? So that's something that I don't know if this is part of anything for part of goal 8, but it's something that we might start considering, thinking about, and talking about, trying to figure it out. How do we how do we approach this? I mean, fire could happen, let's just say the next couple of years, it could happen. And there's not much we can do that, but thinking of longer term of how do we manage that?
And not just fire here, but also smoke, right? So you're going to have
Exactly,
smoke,
yeah.
right? We've seen that now for 3 years. And as you said, it was a pretty horrifying deal down in Lincoln City, and they never thought that would happen to them. All right. Well, it sounds like we've gotten some good feedback for Ms. Hendrickson, but I encourage the commissioners and others to write her more detailed comments so that we can start getting our input in early as she brings in the input of natural resource manager, recreational lands, and the community comp plan update groups. We'll move that forward, and then it sounds like she'll also talk with the county manager about what kind of process could be used to look at better funding our recreational lands and natural areas. Unless, yes, Commissioner Farrar.
Just to clarify here on table one there, or yeah, table one. You know, I know how Director Henrickson's been running the packets to the individual citizen advisory committee groups, and there's always the item and then the staff recommendation whether to keep or change it somehow, and then it's expected that the CAC will say how they feel about it, and then it goes to the county citizen advisory group. So I'm assuming that the thought here today was that the planning commission column there on the far right of the table, that we would put our opinion in for each of those items. Now there's about, I don't know, 40 items or something, so we can't very well go through all those very quickly. But I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate to get some feeling for whether there's a general consensus that for the most part, these policies as written make a lot of sense. There's a need perhaps to update them and make it more clear whether some of these have already been accomplished and those kinds of questions. But are there any in there outright that some commissioner or a majority of the commissioners feel should be rejected?
Feedback on that, Commissioner Patrick Kong?
I don't have a comment on that, except to say, like I said earlier, I think that the staff has done an outstanding job on their recommendations. I had no personal problem with any of the issues.
Thank you.
Right. I guess my issue with this is that I don't know what the capacity of the county work staffs. I mean, what can they do and what they can't do? I mean, it's hard to know if it's something that is within reason or it could be overwhelming for the county projects to take on or parks to take on. So it's a I mean, just one little goal alone, it's implemented noxious weed control program. I mean, that is huge in itself, let alone that many of other goals. So it's a little bit hard to for me to grasp what is possible and what is not.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I would say that the only one I thought that they were all spot on, but the policy 2 was my one specific comment, and it seems that that wouldn't be that controversial because if you look at it, I tried to scroll that, but if you look at it, it's really like, to the extent possible, policy 2, the county should, to the extent practicable, retain existing county-owned streamfront properties. So it's, you know, all of it I feel like is a little, it's like, if possible, you know, focus on this. But it has some wiggle room in a lot of these. And I see comp plans as a little bit aspirational. And then it gets, you know, once you get past the comp plan, then you get down to the land and development ordinances, you get into the specific plans in parks in this case, and that's where the rubber meets the road, where they decide how to prioritize things. So for example, noxious weeds, well, you know, you brought up a great one, Kwong, that Commissioner Kwong, that you know, fire is something that probably isn't really discussed in previous documents for the recreational land. So how do we deal with that? So when our parks burn down, what do we do? Do we salvage log them, or do we restore them? So things like that. I think we should definitely, in this, reflect the new realities, and then allow the subsequent plans to really determine the practicalities of it. All right. Yes, Commissioner Farrar. Let's do just a couple more comments, and then I think we should move on.
Okay,
Yes.
well, this one's where the rubber meets the road. I guess I'm essentially making a motion here for the Planning Commission to take a position on each of the items in Table 1 that would be accepting the staff's recommendation of retaining all of these, although a few of them, there's commissioners with varying degrees of wishing to modify them slightly, but in essence, taking the core of each of the actions or policies mentioned that staff wants to recommends retaining, that the Planning Commission agrees with that position. And I for one, move that we have a blanket kind of Planning Commission agreement with the staff's position on retention of these items. Kind of a long motion.
Yeah, so we could do that. I think, though, is the idea that it comes back to us after the Citizen Advisory Committees, Ms. Hendrickson? Yes.
Okay, so since this is the first time that we're doing this process, what I had envisioned is that instead of bringing everything to you in this sort of format, or after we've rewritten it, that we would get your input to begin with before we brought it to the citizen advisory committees, and then what would come back to you would not be a table like this, but it would be the actual rewrite of first draft of the goal 8 itself, or whatever goal that we would be working on. If it's the direction from the Planning Commission that you would like me to bring back a table format like we do for the countywide that includes everybody's recommendations, including your own original recommendation, so that you can re-review that before we begin our draft rewrite, then we can certainly do that as well.
Commissioner Farrar, we could go ahead with your motion today, just a simple motion saying that, well, you can state your own motion and get a second here, but or we could also just wait until the end and approve and make changes to what comes back to us, which is what we normally would have done. What do you think, Commissioner Farrar?
Well, I just think if the motion was that we are in general agreement with the staff's recommendation, but we await the more detailed consideration of the various citizen advisory committees before making our final decision.
All right, so Commissioner Farrar is moving that the Planning Commission is in general support of the policies, the Goal 8 recreational land goals and policies with updates. Does that sound about right? Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Kwan seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Commissioner Patrick?
I just have a comment. I'm wondering if we really need a motion rather than just consensus. But I had to wait till after the second to make the comment.
Yeah, do we have consensus on that motion? How about that? It sounds like we do if Commissioner Patrick is in agreement.
That's okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So
Good.
the motion has it then. With that, I think we'll move on to the next order of business. So special projects, will staff please give the special projects update? Oh, Ms. Hendrickson, I'm sorry. Yes?
Yes, thank you. My special projects memo was included with the agenda package items. The items that are highlighted in yellow are the items that have been updated for this month. And basically, I would just prefer to answer any questions that people may have regarding specific projects.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Farrar.
I had one question about the resiliency project. I've kind of lost track what's happened on that. There was some pushback from the public on one of the sites that was being considered for moving the equipment yard for public works and so on. And now I see the public works facility needs assessment contract with McKinsey was approved. Could you just tell me again, have we expanded consideration to some other areas besides the one that was out there along the Lewis and Clark Road or whatever that original proposed area was?
Ms. Hendrickson.
Yes, thank you. So Commissioner Farrar, you're correct. There was originally the sort yard that was being looked at for the relocation of the public works offices and fleet maintenance and equipment storage areas. Following public input and discussion over the past several months, what the board approved at the end of January was a contract with McKinsey that will look at not only the physical space needs of public works right now and in the future, but it's also going to be taking an inventory of 12 potential sites and looking at them also in terms of metrics that McKinsey will be establishing in order to evaluate those sites. And then what will happen is from those 12 sites, the list will be narrowed down to 3 and then eventually to 1. And as part of that, there will be 2 commissioners who will be working with staff and McKinsey on this process as they walk through the space assessment and the site assessments.
Thank you.
And so just for the benefit of the commission, I just wanted to note that under the housing recommendations that we had sent forward, our recommendations to the county commission, and the next step in terms of affordable housing is for us to have a work session, both the county commission and the planning commission together on that topic. And that is yet to be planned, but I hope it will be sometime. And then also they have this upcoming meeting date focusing on short-term rentals, which is a nexus with our affordable housing interest on February 24th at the work session. I think that's at 6 o'clock at night. Is that right, Ms. Hendrickson? Or is that a 10 a.m. or? Yes.
Yes, it's at 5 p.m.
Oh, at 5 p.m. So if people have interest in hearing the county commission's, well, the community's take on short-term rentals, focus on Falcon Cove Beach, and then the response from the county commission, I encourage you to attend that meeting. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's move on to the project status report. I think we can just go ahead and go to any questions from the commissioners of staff on these project status. Unless staff has an initial comment. Commissioner Kwong, Farrar, or Patrick, any questions or comments?
No.
Okay. All right, any other business from staff or commissioners before we close out our meeting? From staff or commissioners? All right, well, hearing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thanks everyone for your time.